Hi guys, it's James. I'm out here in a tropical rainforest where I will be spending the night. I'm gonna do a new shelter design which I've never tested before. I think it could open up some good opportunities for me to integrate a fire. A lot of tarp shelters do not have this option. Follow along, I'm gonna show you what I've learned today. Usually when I go camping, I'll take a cell nylon tarp like this. They pack small, they're lightweight, but they are delicate and expensive. Not my first choice for camping next to a fire. Today I'm exploring the advantages of a heavy-duty polyethylene tarp. These are a fraction of the price, easy to find, and durable enough to serve as a roof and a ground cloth. To start this project, I need to look for a good location. This is the most important part of the shelter building process. Ultimately, the bigger the trees, the better when it comes to shelter making. Of course, I need to find trees that are safe, that aren't gonna have widowmaker branches cracking and falling down on my head. These trees are gonna offer me the wind protection I'm looking for, and then just protection from precipitation. Already, I'm finding a much better environment. It's got a canopy, which is creating enough sun break to prevent a lot of these plants that would grow in more open areas from sprouting up and taking over this ground. That means there's a lot more space for campers like me to create some sort of tarp shelter. So I'm gonna follow this trail here. It looks like I'm, on some sort of wild pig trail. I think every trail's somewhat a wild pig trail. I'm gonna go look around, see if I can find trees that are spaced a good distance from each other, somewhere that's not gonna be too low in case it rains a lot tonight, which it probably will, because this is the rainy season and this is a tropical rainforest. So let's go see what I can find. There's a million different shelter designs out there. I'm gonna test out what's commonly known as the sea fly wedge. I'll need 2 elevated points to make this happen. I'm 6 feet tall, so I'm using a 10 by 12 foot tarp, which gives me a comfortable coverage with this design. I'm starting the shelter by loosely tying some paracord between 2 trees. So I've got my ridge line. I've got a tarp that comes equipped with the little holes that we call grommets. And I need to find a way to attach this tarp to this ridge line. And so the best way to do it, I find, is to take a pinch of our ridge line, send it through our little grommet, if I can. And now I've got the finest stick in the forest to place through our loop. And now we've got what people call a toggle. This allows me to shift the tarp this way, to shift it this way. But when I go to pull my ridgeline taut, it's going to keep the tarp from shifting around at all. It's going to keep a really secure tarp throughout the night. I'll throw a toggle in the other side of my ridgeline as well. I'm going to show you how I will secure this rope to a tree and make this ridgeline very tight. So let's take a look. I'm going to go around my tree 1 time. I'm going to go around my tree 2 times. This is going to add just a little bit of friction here. It's going to make the whole cinching process a lot easier. What I'm going to do is a trucker's hitch here, pretty standard for a nice tight ridge line. And so that's going to look like me taking the ridge line and just creating a slip knot. So I'll do a loop here, and I'm going to pull through this side, the side closest to the tree. I don't want to pull this side through. So I've done a loop. I'm going to do one of these. Now I've got a loop, which is a slip knot. If I pull this side, it slips. So with my slip knot, I'll go ahead and throw through my excess rope. And now I've got friction here. I've got mechanical leverage here, which sometimes you really do need to measure where your slip is going to be, because as you can see, if I tighten here, look what's going to happen. Oh, I'm almost getting to this tree, and I actually think I could pull it off without hitting the tree. but I'm very close. It'd be better for me to have my slip knot down here, of course. But that's tight, so I'm gonna go ahead and tie it off. That's gonna look like me pinching this friction point and then grabbing a bite of the paracord. And I'm just gonna pull a bite through. I'm not gonna pull the whole line through. Okay? I've got all this excess here. A simple little safety is just wrapping around and through. This thing's not gonna come undone. I've got good friction around my tree here. This is not wanting to go up and down. I've got nice taut line here going over to my tarp. So it's a good system. It's simple, it's effective. You can tie stuff down to your car with the trucker's hitch or your truck. And it's just so practical for things like ridgelines. As I'm adjusting my ridgeline, it's helpful to loosely anchor my tarp to the ground or a nearby solid object. Strong shelters often start with a bit of a loose, rough draft, which is eventually tightened down into its ideal configuration. You're probably starting to see now why people call this shelter the sea fly wedge. Now I've got a roof, a wall to block the prevailing winds, and a moisture barrier between me and the ground. All good things. But I'm going to add some bedding. It is critical to add insulation below us, especially in cold climates where cold ground can suck the heat out of our body. The last time I slept in this forest, I was soaking wet and it was windy, and adding a pile of leaves beneath me created air pockets to keep me warm. I want to talk about a concern here. I love that I've got this roof right here. I can be inside here and this roof is offering me so much protection, right? If I didn't have this little downward slope here, I'm exposing myself to so much more rain. But if I get my fire out here, all of a sudden I have this material right here getting close to whatever sort of heat is going to be rising through convection and potentially melting my tarp. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sacrifice a few inches of my lovely protective slope right here so that I can get my fire closer to my body. Therefore, my body can absorb more of the radiant heat coming from that fire without me melting my roof. As soon as I adjusted my roof, it started to rain, and I got immediate feedback on why I should not have changed my roof. The lower lip of my tarp is now rolling rain around and into my shelter. Whoops. Better to get this lesson now than in the middle of the night. So I'm retying everything, deciding my next test will be measuring how hot my tarp gets once I integrate a fire. I've been surprised how cold I can get in warm climates, sleeping only in wet clothes. So I want to get enough firewood to keep a fire going throughout the night. This means breaking down some big pieces of wood and arranging them to burn slowly. I'm deciding 6 good-sized logs set aside should be enough for me to feed the fire throughout the night. The papery eucalyptus bark I found for my bedding looks like it would burn easily, but in this environment it absorbs moisture like toilet paper left in the rain, so I'm lighting a small piece of a cotton shirt to get my kindling burning. I'm slowly building the fire up and slowly moving it within a safe distance from my tarp. A small fire isn't going to burn for very long, so I want my fire to be as big as possible without endangering my shelter. Lucky me, I got a decent night's sleep and I was not attacked by pigs. It was also not nearly as cold or windy as the last time I slept here. There's a few things about this design that I think work really well. I get good weather protection from above and below. But there's also something that I absolutely need to change. This is about the distance I was sleeping at from the fire. It was perfect. There was a few points where the fire got warm, too warm for my liking, and I was able to reach out, adjust the fire with the fire down a little bit. It was perfect for keeping me warm. Felt like it helped dry the space a little bit. I did wake up a few times throughout the night. I put 1 or 2 logs on. The bugs were definitely a thing I had to deal with. I don't know what kind of bugs they were. Tiny little things that they don't even walk. They just pop. And they enjoyed popping on my hands and my face. You know, I ended up putting this shirt on because luckily this thing has a hood and long sleeves. Gloves were an option. I actually did not even put those on. I forgot that those were part of my kit. What I did end up doing was taking a shirt here and covering my head, covering my hands, and that kept them from getting to me, and I was able to sleep. It doesn't take much to get this fire smoking. It's just inevitable when you have fire in the rain. It wasn't enough rain to extinguish the fire, but it definitely creates smoke. This peak right here does great things. I feel like it potentially traps some heat, but one of the other things it does is it traps smoke. Now right now, this smoke is heading away from my shelter, but a little change in the wind, and I was getting smoke coming into my shelter. You know, it's collecting up here at the peak, and there's periods where I felt like I was breathing more smoke than I should be. I need to adjust the peak of this design to catch less smoke. I'm going to test removing the peak completely and extending my tarp as a single slope up to the ridgeline. This modification turns this shelter into a design known as the envelope. This will likely give me less weather protection and less heat retention, but solve the smoke problem. So is it worth carrying a heavy-duty polyethylene tarp? There's a lot of advantages going on here. I can actually have a floor to my shelter to keep all my gear dry. Of course, build some sort of bed underneath my shelter. This could be soaking wet leaves. This stuff was wet. You know, I could have a sleeping bag on this, and that sleeping bag would stay fairly dry. Maybe I integrate a bug screen in with this, and then I've got a very modular tent. No tent poles required. More spacious. I don't have to worry about the condensation problems of a tent. Once I wrap this tarp up, I've got something that's going to be cleaner, has a better floor, probably weighs less than a tent. There's a lot of promising attributes to this shelter. So do you have a shelter design you like to integrate with the fire? I'd really like to dial in the best solution, so let me know what you think, and maybe I'll make a video testing out your design. So there you go, another shelter and new discoveries. If you like this sort of stuff and you want to continue to learn, go ahead and do the good old like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.